Yeah, ready.
Well, hey everybody. My name is Jared Malott. I'm here with my good friend Mateo Coltist. This is the Coltist. This is season 3. This is episode 7. Am I
Yeah, we can go ahead and say it's the yeah, not the Matt Gay episode because he missed another kick today.
right?
But we have
Oh,
to.
buddy.
Who could it be? Number seven. I don't remember any other guy that wore number seven for Colts. Curtis Painter. I know he wore number seven, the backup in the Peyton Manning years. I mean, if you want to honor him.
So we've talked over this. Burt Jones, Jacoby Brissett.
Oh yeah,
Um, we could easily do that. I just want to make sure it's the 7th episode.
I'm all for Jacoby Brissett.
It
He
could be
won.
wrong.
He beat
It
the what was it? He
is.
beat the. He's now starting for
We
the
did
Patriots
7.
again.
We did 7. Week 3,
Oh,
episode
so
7. So
it's
we're on
eight.
8.
Eight would be who wears number eight right now? Do
Well,
we have an
I'm
eight?
looking it up. So, Rigoberto Sanchez,
Ah, yes.
okay, for the
Yeah,
last
great
eight
punt.
years, one of the more unheralded Colts. Just been
Yeah,
really good at the position, but 8 years in the NFL, with the same team, is remarkable.
and he
Obviously,
had this injury running the sprints under with Frank Reich. I remember that he missed a year. He came back, and I'm not sure. Let me check it out. Yeah, he overcame a tumor in 2020. He had a tumor. He missed a couple games. Yeah, overall, great player, great story. I mean,
yeah.
the guy beat potential cancer. He overcame, I believe it was an Achilles tear. Suffered, I don't know if last year or the year before. So yeah, I'm okay with him being the the recipient of the name honor.
The long-term punter here, the
Yeah,
Colts, after Pat McAfee. So that's, a good
big shoes to fill.
16 years of stability at that position. It says an awful lot. Um, Obviously you learn a lot when you have a guy like Pat for a while on your team. But yeah, to follow that up, get Rigo have gone through all that and still remain the Colts punter is awesome. Obviously, we could start and talk about the Colts today, but I wanted to start on a positive note.
Yeah, it's
So
always good
for
to
those
start
of
on a
us, this is
positive
your
note.
first time ever reviewing this podcast. You're like, they're about to talk at length about the Indianapolis Colts. Don't worry, we're going to do that too. But I think we ought to talk about Caitlin Clark, and we ought to talk
Yeah,
about the Indiana Fever. We ought to talk about the WNBA. It wasn't against a winning team, so
yeah.
I'm beating
Are the
people to the
Mystic like the
punch.
worst, the worst team
Yeah,
in the WNBA right now? But
yeah.
yeah, you still have to beat them. I mean, it's
You
a
still got to
WNBA
beat those
game.
people.
Yeah,
Okay, but the Indiana Fever not only won, Caitlin Clark had 35 points. And Kelsey Mitchell also had 30 points today.
yeah,
Um, I remember, brother, when we sat down and we're kind of looking at the data and we were like, wow, like the WNBA, Caitlin Clark, the Fever are going to be wildly popular. They might even win some games. We'd be kind of remiss if we didn't sit and talk about that too. It's also an Indiana thing. We already are talking about the Colts and Pacers. It seemed kind of a natural fit. And she's been everything and more you could have asked for,
yeah.
out of a number one draft pick. Um,
Seems like somehow related to what I believe like the relationship with what LeBron James was. I
mhm.
think it's fair because this is a girl who had all the hype in the world, and you're like, hey, what are your expectations? And I mean, if you're not a Hall of Fame caliber player by the end of your career, it's a disappointment. I
Right.
mean, your expectations are through the roof, and they come in and they turn around. I mean, the Fever were probably the worst WNBA franchise the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they picked number one 2 years in a row. And you come in and you basically secure a playoff berth. and I mean you're one of the you're I mean at least a first team all WNBA. She
Yeah.
broke the season record for assists. She broke the points record for rookies. I mean, it's just rookie of the year, no doubt. First team WNBA, in my opinion. And I can't wait to see what she does in the playoffs. I mean, if you look at her college career in Iowa, she was really clutch. She made the plays when it mattered the most.
Yep.
And this is a team that got really hot at the right time. And you never want to face, those kind of teams that they start off a bit slow, they struggle a bit out of the gate, and then they get it together and they start winning.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, this is a 6 seed, but if the season were, I don't know, 15 games longer, we're talking about potentially a second seed, third seed. Because they're winning, and they're winning
Yeah.
much more than they are losing.
And they're beating the good teams too, you
Yeah,
know. And one of the things I want to point out about Caitlin Clark that I've noticed that makes me say things like she reminds me of LeBron, she reminds me of Michael. I've noticed that she has good games when the Fever lose too. And a lot of times, whether teams win or not, falls on the star. And like you said, you know, the Fever have been bad. They've been so bad. In
yeah,
fact, the last 2 years in a row, they had the number one overall pick. Um, but what I've noticed, and what is easy to see, you just look at the box score and you're like, in the beginning of the year, her teammates were overwhelmed
yeah,
and they weren't rising to the occasion. And today is a great example of how not only did Caitlin Clark have to turn it up, she scored 35, and that's not what she's about. She's very much a ball distributor and just an all around good basketball player. But not only did she turn it up and have 35, but Kelsey Mitchell had 30 points today. And one of the things that, as someone who not only watches the games, but then I go look at the box score, is what I saw in the game, is it reflected in these numbers? And one of the things that I've noticed is over the course of the year is those other guards have started to step it up. And when you're a great ball distributor and scorer yourself and the best player and you're unselfish and your other shooters start hitting, that's a sign of a really dangerous basketball team. Because like I don't know if we've ever had this conversation, but because I coach basketball too. But if you just try to pound the paint and are just trying to hit layups, you're going to lose games against shooting teams,
yeah.
teams that can feature the three, because three is more than two. And if you're hitting, it's a lot more because if you're hitting if you're hitting the three, typically you're hitting it like 40+%. But if you think about, well, if you're shooting a two and you're shooting like 50%, it's like, no, you're still really losing that game. You know, so when you have a great point guard, and it showed early in the year, I think the girls were overwhelmed. They're kind of coming to terms with the sort of package that Caitlin Clark has, you know, the bag, as they say. But over time, um, you know, I've just, like I said, it's been readily apparent to me that she's going to be the face of the WNBA. She has a clean all around game. And then she has games like today where she hit multiple 26 foot plus threes today. So she was just destroying. And it's great to see. And I want to make sure we started our podcast by talking at length
Yeah,
about the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark in the WNBA, because it is it is wildly important that men, specifically white men, talk about women's sports, especially when it's like it's in your hometown. It's good basketball. She plays a good brand of basketball. Um, it's like watching young John Stockton. And that's probably like, or maybe Steve Nash. Just watching someone who has basketball figured out on a level that like other professional athletes don't, and that they're having to rise to her occasion.
yeah,
And so I want to make sure that we kind of spoke about that. It's important that that we do that before we talk, we go into the doldrums of, oh, we suck again, the Colts, right? And hell of a segue, Jared. Like the Colts lost today to Green Bay Packers, 16-10. It was a road game. Young starter and Anthony Richardson. Was this like his sixth start?
Yeah,
And today was like the day we forgot to stick them, right? Like I counted a half dozen drops. Probably
yeah, at
more. There's
least.
probably
Yeah, I
more than
believe it
six
was 5 and 6,
drops.
and they
Which
came at like the worst time too.
the thing about Anthony Richardson was 17 of 34 today, so completed 50% of his passes, which for the record was an improvement upon last week in which he didn't. He was like 47%. But what is important is balls on target. And without a shadow of a doubt, Anthony Richardson is putting the ball where it's supposed to go,
Yeah,
which is the hallmark of a great quarterback. Is like even when the team's bad, like he's still putting the ball where it's supposed to go. Yeah, he had some turnovers. I counted
yeah, he made some
five.
mistakes.
Like
Yeah,
he had two fumbles that were recovered. That's fine. That's still a turnover. And then three interceptions. So typically you're going to lose games when the other team is able to rush 53 times for 260 something yards. Um, but more importantly, it felt like every meaningful down where the Colts elected to pass, the ball hit the receiver in the hands and hit the ground.
yeah,
Now, I'm also willing to say, well, yeah, half of those misses, those drops, needed to be drops because if he catches it, he gets killed.
yeah. He gets killed, yeah,
Sure,
it makes no
sure.
sense.
But a check down's a check down. Balls on you is balls on you, right? Receivers got to make the play. But like I said, it felt like today we were in the upside down, and it was like NFL league wide, brother. Like if I told you when we
Yeah,
woke up this morning that the Vikings were going to beat the 49ers, if I told you
without
that
Justin Jefferson for an
the
entire half.
if the Bucks were going to beat the Lions on the road, that the Indianapolis Colts with this rocket ship that is Anthony Richardson, were going to go on the road and put up 10 friggin' points, you'd have said, Jared, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
None of those things are going to happen today, but we are clearly in the upside down. It's it's fine. It's one of those things where like you know it's so glaring. Like when you look at the box score, you didn't even have to watch the game. You look at the box score and you're like, oh, 5 catches on 8 targets to your number one receiver. Oh, that's not great.
yeah,
And then you counter that, you look at the other team just to be like, well, they had drops too. No, their quarterback completed 12 of 14 passes.
yeah.
So it sounded
And
like
I
to
think that,
me, go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah, I think that the fact that as long as we were talking about the fact that he attempted just 14 attempts and they had what, like, let me just say the exact number of how many times they put the ball on the ground. I believe it was at least 3 times more. And I just want to go out and say that the fact that it was obvious that Jordan Love was not playing this game.
Yeah.
We saw how his knee popped. There was no way
53.
he was playing this game. Yeah. So
53
then
for
you go out,
261.
damn, and then you go out and say, okay, we know that their backup. I mean, it's not like their backup was, I don't know, Joe Flacco, Gardner Minshew, guys that you say, okay, yeah, they can come in and lead an offense. Malik Willis had 3 starts before this in 3 years. He had no passing touchdowns. He's not a good NFL quarterback. I mean, he was probably entering the week the worst starter in the NFL this week. And you have to prepare for it. And you have to think, okay, their quarterback sucks. What are they going to try to do? They're going to try and run the ball. They're going to desperately try and run the ball. So what I'm going to do, I have to be able to stop that. And like right from the start, the Colts could not stop the running game. And while I think it did not matter in points scored because they scored just 16, as you were saying. They
Yeah.
drained the clock. I mean, there was no time at all to get your offense going. In the end, you had no time to make the comeback. I think if the game was, 2 quarters longer, which of course, NFL games aren't, they are 4 quarters, you
Right.
would have won the game. I mean,
Yeah.
but they left you zero time. Like if you look at the time of possession, like how much time did the Packers have the ball compared to the Colts? And you look like, for example, the first 3, 4 drives for the Colts. How long were they? They were like 3, 4 plays. I don't think the
Yeah.
Colts had a drive over, I don't know, 8 plays today. I think that's an issue because you need to be able to give time to your defense to rest. It can't be all like, hey, I'm either getting a 60-yard touchdown or I'm going 3 and out. You have to have some balance where you can say, okay, we can sustain a 10, 12 play drive. We can give our defense 6, 7 minutes to rest while we tire the opposing defense. You have to be able to do that. And the
Right.
Colts right now can. And that's what worries me the most about this team.
Yeah. It's almost like it's not today. I don't feel like it was the quarterback. I don't feel like it was play
Yeah.
calling. I feel like it was execution. I feel like it was a young team on the road in Lambeau. Um, I think that I've heard from a lot of people that Lambeau Field is like really hard as a visitor. Um, like so loud you can't communicate even on the sideline. Loud.
Yeah.
So knowing that, knowing you've got a young team, knowing you've got a quarterback in his sixth start, um, knowing that ultimately you're missing starters. We were we had a long conversation before we started
Yeah.
recording. Um, but I try to think about, do the Colts have 22 starter level players, offensive and defensive? And if your answer is yeah, they do, and I tell you, well, you're DeForest Buckner and Josh Downs, offense, one person on
Yeah.
offense and defense are out.
And then
Um,
you can also say Julian Blackmon, you're
mhm,
by far, clearly your starting safety.
mhm.
Juju Brents, your number one cornerback and the best cornerback on the team,
There's four
also out.
starters.
Yeah.
So, but if I told you DeForest Buckner and Josh Downs are out, how much does that affect your game plan? A lot. Um, it affects your game plan a lot.
Yeah.
Josh Downs takes pressure off of your outside receivers to be third down targets. And think about the balls that go to Jonathan Taylor as a check down because he's not good to feature in the pass game. So you have to have him as a safety. And he had drops because that's not the looks he wants. It's not really looks anybody wants. When you're basically running a flat and you don't know what's behind you and the ball's on you anyway, so you just kind of got to catch it. And it's like, no, you're gonna get killed. Like,
Yeah.
try not to go down like that. But yeah, there are a handful of plays that have nothing to do with the interception. So one of the things I don't do is waste my time trying to get out of a pick. It's like, no, you threw the pick. How do we win when you throw picks? There are like 3 plays that were called first down balls that you have to make the catch. And the Colts didn't make that catch. And I think it's because of targets on other balls, and they
Yeah.
kind of add up over the game. Where if a guy is too uh, hot and the defense is like all over him, it can kind of make it difficult to make those catches. And it's not to say like guys aren't built for the pressure. It's just like it's not good pressure, right? You getting them make sure they hit you, or make sure they get hands on you and be aggressive with you. It saps your energy, right? So that's one of the things I think about. They're very physical with Pierce and Pittman.
Yeah.
And both those boys were leaned on and gotta have it moments and came up short. And I think if you ask the Colts players what happened, they'd tell you like guys that usually make plays they didn't make those
Yeah.
plays. Um and that's that. It's kind of like a that's that situation. Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly what you
You have
saw
to live with that.
is exactly what you saw on TV is exactly why the Colts lost. Every time there was a ball thrown and it was dropped, especially when third down ball, gotta have them.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was in the middle of this game thinking about Josh Downs. You know, there was a run off the right side the Texans had for a first down, and all I could think about was Buckner. And it's just like, oh yeah, you know, if 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 the answer to the Colts have 22 starter level players is yes, and you're missing guys like Buckner and Downs who you clearly view as starters because of the question prior, then the guys that are backing them up are not starter level
Yeah.
players.
Yeah. No, not at all.
You know, so that tells me that there is a degree of separation between Ashton Doolin and Josh Downs, right?
Yeah.
Taven Bryan and
Yeah.
Buckner,
That's yeah.
right? There's an ocean between those people.
You see it, like you see it during the game. You see how they try to run at Taven Bryan. You see like they are targeting him on purpose. And when you see the Forrest Buckner on the field, if you know go ahead, try and run at him. He's gonna
Right.
I mean he's gonna stop you. And
Right.
also the difference between Jalen Jones and Juju Brents. You see Jalen Jones during. I mean there was a key
Is that
play
number
again.
40?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you saw like the play where Malik Willis under threw it up, and Romeo Dowds he just unopposed. He stopped, he jumped, he catch the ball. He made it look so easy. And you're like, that's the play where you should be able to easily get an interception, or at least, at the very least, break up the pass.
Yeah.
Like they made it easy for you. It was an underthrown. You saw it, and you were still not able to make the play. And then, Kenny Moore also, who has, in my opinion, escaped a lot of criticism. He missed, there were 3 plays where I saw it clearly because I was looking out for it. He missed 3 key tackles on third down where he
Who
had
is
a clean
that?
shot. Kenny Moore,
Oh, Kenny.
I saw it. I mean, he's just, I have, of course, I had to rewatch the game before, passing judgment so hard. But he just looked like he did not want to be there. I mean, the lack of effort is what kills me because hey, this is not a guy characterized by lack of effort. This is usually a guy that leaves it all on the field. This, I mean, this is not characteristic for Kenny to be doing things like this. And then, of course, like we talked about this before we start recording, anytime your starting safety has 15 tackles, and I think Nick Cross has like what 30 tackles in the first 2 games.
Yeah, yeah, we looked it up.
Yeah, he's leading the NFL, and that is not a good sign. That is not
Well, one of them
something
didn't even
good.
play. Imagine
Yeah,
being top 20 in tackles in the NFL and
and
you're
not
not
even
even
playing a
in the
game.
game.
Yeah,
You're
and
not
that's an
playing. You didn't
issue.
even play. That's an issue. The
That's an issue because, like we said, it those are the tackles that your starting linebackers are supposed to be making. Those are the tackles where your linebackers are supposed to be stopping them for, I don't know, 2, 3 yards. They should be getting that, and you stop them, but instead, it's your safety who's tackling them. And if your safety is the one that's doing that, it's usually because they already got 8 to 10 yards, 12, 15, and that's not a good sign. That's not a good play. That's not positive. That's not something that you want. So, I mean, yeah, if we start pointing fingers, I think I agree with you. Like it has nothing to do with the quarterback. He played a good game. Like you said, the drops, the AD Mitchell had a key drop on third down where the throw, hits him right on the hands. I mean, you have to be able to get that. And he didn't. And that's a third down where, again, if you make that, I mean, of course, it's all hypothetical, but
Right.
If he catches that, then the Colts are in field goal position, and you're like, hey, now it's 13-16. And what if, the missed field goal, the play before that, you had, the speed option route, the speed option play, sorry, with I believe it was Trey Sermon, and you're running it with him, and you're like, why is JT, who is averaging like 8 yards per carry, why is he not in the most important play of the game? And why are you running that on 3rd and 1? And then it's a 50-yard field goal instead of a 46, and he misses it. And you're like, if you don't do something as stupid as that, it's 16-16, and you go to overtime. But yeah, we can sit down and discuss hypotheticals all day. The
Right.
truth is that we didn't win.
And like I said, I think the farther we get away from no Josh Downs, no DeForest Buckner, that's when it's like you're getting way too far into the hypotheticals. When it's like, no, look at what actually you can see. You could say they couldn't stop the run. They had a gaping hole in our front. Oh, we
Yeah,
couldn't we couldn't stay on the field on offense. You're missing arguably, I would call him like your cog in your wheel, right? Like
yeah,
you drafted a kid that could try to take his role. But ultimately Josh Downs keeps the ball moving, right? And he can be your little motion guy and your little jet sweep guy. And I think if that guy's not completely healthy, he's not playing. And you can see the lack of, sort of movement, movement with regularity that the Colts lack without a Josh Downs. And again, I just came away from this game thinking about how important people are, right? And like how you try to uh narrow it down to a handful of plays. And like I said, I think we can point to a lot of drops and say like the receiver room didn't show up today. But again, part of the receiver room's not playing. So the whole offense is changed. And like a program will never admit that being down a guy is
yeah,
devastating. We have to change our whole playbook. But I wanted to make this point because I've brought it up to you a couple times. So I was actually gifted an NFL playbook from 2013. This is like the beginning of Andrew Luck's career, and it was Pep Hamilton's playbook. Okay. So normally when you're drawing up X's and O's, the left receiver's the X, the right receiver's the Z, the quarterback's the Q, the running back's the T or whatever. Over a
yeah,
decade ago, they didn't use X and Z. They used the number of the player, like Reggie Wayne, right? And the offense was built around that individual's skill set. And like I've said, Josh Downs is a starter level player.
yeah,
So, how much of your offense was devoted to having Josh Downs on the field? And if most of that isn't true, well, that's a mistake. Josh Downs is a special player with a unique skill set, right? So, what the Colts are finding out is like it's tough when you're missing starters. The Colts are down at least four starter level players. Um, and also are very young playing on the road in Green Bay. So there's a lot of factors here that are like, yeah, that all sounds like a brew for a loss, right?
yeah,
Quarterback effectively had 5 turnovers, 3 picks, and two lost fumbles. They were recovered. It's not about that. It's about the ball being effectually up for grabs. Um, but again, these are growing pains. These are things I'm fully willing to accept.
yeah,
And here's why today does not matter. Green Bay is in the NFC. Of all the games that you could afford to lose, this is a game you can afford to lose. Why?
yeah,
Because this doesn't impact seeding. This is an NFC game. This is an out of conference game. So I guess we should have seen it coming. Is probably more along the lines of like sort of the mentality here. There were just a lot of mitigating factors before the game that are gonna affect an outcome. Absolutely. And again, I keep beating myself on the head. I should be thinking about that before the game. It sets me up as a fan with better expectations when I'm like, instead of, oh yeah, we're missing
Yeah,
them, but you still got a game plan to win. Oh, sure, bro, because there's money on the line. But the reality of the situation is,
yeah,
it's these
it's not
people
as
are
easy
very
as it seems.
important.
Yeah,
DeForest Buckner has a very unique skill set, and how much of your playbook is devoted to DeForest Buckner being put in a range of scenarios? And if a lot of your defensive playbook isn't devoted to that, well, that seems like an error. And then when that guy's not playing, again, I'd argue how much of your playbook is devoted to playing defense without DeForest Buckner on the field on important downs. Oh, not very much. That seems wise. You're gonna run out of shit. You're gonna be easier to diagnose on
yeah,
offense and defense because you're not able to play a full playbook's worth of football because you're missing a bunch of starter level players. So it's like you're running remedial shit so that this third and fourth string guy that's getting his shot can look like he knows what he's doing. So I know that's not what people want to hear when they listen to a podcast, is like they want someone, they want to be angry, but it's like you can't be angry when you're very clearly
yeah,
missing
yeah.
multiple
You're missing
dynamic
that,
players,
and
mostly on defense too. And so when the opposing offense runs the ball 53 times for 264 yards, hell yeah, they were going to run the ball 53 times. They were going to test your tacklers.
yeah,
And also one of the things I want to note about the disappearance of EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, a lot of people are tying that to their podcast. And all I'd argue is that, when you draw up a play, you try to get a hat on everybody. And I'm willing to bet in these offensive line meetings, they're talking about Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed have a very popular podcast. They don't spend a lot of time talking shit because they've just been out here getting it. We got to make sure we get a hat on 45 and 44. And if you don't, they're sure tacklers. They'll just hit your guy. And what happens? Teams come in, try to get to the second level, get a hat on 45 and 44, and try to make their safeties and corners do the business.
yeah,
So as much like it's not like we're playing against robots. You're also playing against people who are making decisions that influence outcomes as well, you know? And
yeah,
I do think there were a couple times there were some times where Malik Willis was very obviously going to drop back and run. You know what I mean? Like this is in that area, we're in that part of the field where like he's just gonna drop back and roll out and run. And kind of not, it almost feels like this. The Colts can't game plan for the opposing number one.
yeah,
Either it's a running back or wide
yeah. And it goes
receiver.
back. It goes back to last year. You remember last year where
I felt like I've said this since like the 90s.
oh
This is
yeah,
like this is the identity of the Indianapolis Colts. Your best player is about to have a hell of a day. Everybody else is going to have to work for their money, but your best player is going to have a good day. And that's what happens when you play against the Colts, offense or defense. It don't really matter. And it's all, and I get it. These players are great. You could game plan for your guy, but what if he goes down? And it's just like, but that's not how it is.
yeah.
So it's tough. Um, when you feel like you've got all the pieces and you're just not able to put together a win. Um,
And if I think that once again this was a game where if the offense is not as sloppy as it was, even though the defense allowed 250 running yards, if the offense that does not make the key mistakes they made, and they played, I believe it was perhaps the worst offensive game I have seen from the Colts with a starting quarterback in recent history. Because of course,
Yeah.
when Luck gets injured and then Brissett gets injured, and you have Brian Hoyer in at your quarterback position, of course you're gonna struggle. But when you have your starting quarterback there, I think this was the worst game for the Colts offensive wise because of the drops, the interceptions. They didn't have enough time. I think it was just 7 or 8 drives. It wasn't nearly enough drives to get something going.
Yep.
Lack of execution. You had a key, fourth down where you failed to execute and you turned the ball over in downs. I think this was the worst we will see the offense play this year. So yeah, of course, fingers crossed. Hopefully it does not get any worse. But we should. This offense should revert back to the mean. All signs point to Josh Downs being hopefully available. He practiced this week. He was limited in practice in the end. The Colts didn't want to risk it, so
Yeah.
they didn't play him, which seems wise. But he should be able to go next week. You'll be getting your number one slot receiver, perhaps your number two receiver, other than Michael Pittman. Of course, we talked at length about how important he is. You will be getting him back. Your offense will probably go for at least 27 points next week, and
Right.
I think that when you speak about the floor for this offense, you have to be able to recognize. I saw some tweets saying that Anthony Richardson, hey, I told you this guy was going to be a bust. Look at the interception he threw. You're like, okay, you're just picking one bad play, first of all, and acting like quarterbacks can't have bad plays or bad days. Like, hey, you should be perfect every single time you step out on the field. And if you don't, you're a bust. I'm like, yeah, this you are stupid, first of all.
So one of the
And
things that successful people do is it's like similar emotions towards a win and a loss. When you win, it's actually a negative thing because you're right. That's like the last thing you want to tell someone that's like competitive. Did everything right. We won. You can go home now.
mm,
Job's done. But you learn so fucking much when you lose. And I think that, Anthony Richardson said he wanted to be great. And last week, he didn't, I didn't really get to talk about this. Last week, Anthony Richardson didn't even complete 50% of his passes and
yeah,
was the second highest rated quarterback in the NFL. So he can clearly play. Clearly, what he does is like dynamic. It's incredible to watch. Today was a day, like I said, an entire room of people is just eating a jugs machine all week long. Like you're just gonna take as many balls as you can take until your fingertips are raw because we can't be dropping balls.
yeah,
That's just you can't have drops. Picks, he's in his sixth start. He's the youngest quarterback in the NFL.
yeah.
Let
You're
that
gonna
boy
see
make some
picks.
errors so that we can fix him, right? Like the first pick he threw, he was trying to layer a football. It's hard to do. Easy to overthrow, easy to underthrow. He was trying to layer the ball over coverage and under coverage, and he overthrew the second guy, which was his receiver, and hit the third guy, which was their defender. That was his first pick. Like I said, again, first of all, if you go into every year, every game, thinking we're going to win this game and we're going to be really good this year, you're going to be sorely disappointed
Yeah,
when you have a very young quarterback. I'm never saying like he's not good. He's like super good. He's so good that it like you need to build your whole offense and what your whole offense is doing around what he's good at. Um because like I said, I'm excited for the Colts to get Josh Downs back. I think it makes them interesting on offense. And like you said, this is one of those games you could just put in the rear view. It's not that big of a deal. It's an NFC game. It's an out of conference game. It will not hurt your
Yeah,
ability to play in the playoffs. There are much more important games that you're going to have to win. And like I said, it's tough to go into Lambeau, but it's tough to go
yeah,
into Lambeau with the youngest quarterback in the NFL on his like sixth start and just expect fireworks when the guys that he's throwing to are dropping the shit. So I think that pretty much settles that. You know what I mean? And then
yeah,
we all close it up, talk a little Pacers. There's not really a lot to talk about, which is fantastic news.
yeah. That's what
When
you
you're in
want.
the off season of like a good sports team, I don't want to hear nothing. But what I've noticed that I want to make sure we shout out is Tyrese Halliburton at Colts games, at Fever games, and
Yeah, he's
I've seen the
constantly there.
Pacers
Yeah,
as a team together like all summer long. And that's awesome. And that's a sign of a good team. And like I said, regardless of today's loss, like I said, we opened on the Fever winning for a reason. Um, it's a good time. It's a great time to be an Indiana sports fan. And I want to kind of make sure we say that. I'm not unhappy, not
yeah,
unhappy. We're going to take the good with the bad, the wins with the losses. As like I said, as long as you've got the youngest quarterback in the NFL, and it looks like the Colts are going to have the youngest quarterback in the NFL probably this year and next year too.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of how I see it. How you feeling about it?
Nah, yeah, like you said, like I mean, we have to take into account that this is the youngest quarterback. Like you said, he's gonna be the youngest quarterback next season too. He was the youngest quarterback last year, of course, because he was younger.
Yeah,
And I said it, in the Discord chat, like even if he plays like this, I think this was the worst we are going to see him play on a game, and it was
sure.
not that bad. Even if he plays like this all season long, I would still give him, next year to
Oh, for
start
sure.
too, because you're saying, hey, this is a guy that has less than 20 starts in college and the NFL. It was his first time playing outdoors away from home, because the only away game he played was against the Texans. And you're like, yeah, this is a place where the Colts usually go out and win.
Yeah,
It's a dome, so it's not as hard as going to, you said it, Lambeau Field, which is,
Lambeau
one of the
Field.
hardest places to play. And you're like, this he's just gonna get better and better and better. So just, be patient, be understand that there are some growing pains.
Oh yeah,
You're gonna struggle with accuracy, you're gonna struggle a bit with, decision making. He's learning. He has just 20 starts under his name. And what I am interested in watching is, I want to be able to, look at the perhaps, the first 4 to 5 games here, and
mhm,
then look at the final 4 to 5 games and say, okay, he clearly improved here. He clearly made a better decision here. He looks much more, much more poised under pressure. Here he made the right read, whereas in the first week he made the wrong read. So these are clear signs that the dude is progressing, and
mhm.
he's gonna have, hopefully, getting way ahead of myself, but he's gonna have a healthy off season where he can don't worry about recovering his shoulder and just getting the chemistry right with his teammates, understanding how the NFL works, getting his body up to shape. He's raw. Look at how Bryce Young is playing, and tell me like, hey, they are young quarterbacks, and just look at how Baker is doing now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a guy that they clearly, the Browns clearly, they dropped him way too early. They did not give him time to develop and show what he can do.
Oh yeah,
And it's not like he's 36 years old, where you say, hey, they gave him 15 years. They gave him what, like 3 or 4 seasons, and okay, in a year
yep.
you're out.
And he had like a different
Usually,
head coach, different OC every
yeah.
year.
And you're
Um,
like,
I think they said, he's now taken multiple franchises to the playoffs. So
yeah,
he could clearly ball. And That was one of the years I scouted quarterbacks for the the drafts guide that we made at Stampede Blue.
Yeah,
Uh, Watching Baker Mayfield, old white people don't like him, but everybody else that watches football probably really likes Baker Mayfield. Like he just has this level of charisma that rubs
yeah,
off on other people that they are going to go out and ball. And the more talent that you put around someone who it, Baker Mayfield reminds me of Caitlin Clark in that he's a distributor. He's pushing the ball around. And like I said, he's taken multiple franchises to playoffs. Like this is
yeah,
clearly um a rock solid quarterback in the NFL. Again, I'm not going out on a limb and calling him a star yet. Kind of got to win something to be a star. But again, even when I go back and I think about when I was watching him, I think about Josh Allen was really raw, and I think it's really between Baker Mayfield and
yeah,
Lamar Jackson in that class. If you go back and look at the tape, who had the best tape? And it's like Baker had some, just, he was a gunslinger in college. Like he was going to be good. And Lamar just like something you have never seen. And that draft is very relevant now, right?
yeah,
Because four of those first five quarterbacks drafted are stars in the league.
yeah,
As much as you could say it as much as you want, but like Sam Darnold is playing well, that he's in that class as well.
yeah. He's doing
Um,
well.
so
And
yeah.
and since you brought it up, I just looked it up. Josh Allen, he had like 25 starts in
Mhm,
college,
mhm.
so he already had a little bit more experience at what Anthony Richardson has right now.
Yeah.
And if you look at if you just stop and look at Josh Allen, I think that's a really good comparison
Mhm.
to Anthony Richardson because of playing style issues when they
Yeah.
first came into the league. Hey, go out and look at how Josh Allen did his rookie year. He had more interceptions than touchdowns. His completion rate was below 55%. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
The next year, it was rather similar to that. It was similar numbers, low completion rate. He had more touchdowns. But you're saying, okay, so Josh Allen basically took like, I don't know, 20 games, 20 NFL games before he started, putting it all together and being consistently great, at least 20, 25 NFL games. And he had 25 games in college. So you're like, hey, Anthony Richardson, he needs at least a full season to, make mistakes.
Yeah. So
You
you have
say,
something to
oh, hey,
fix.
yeah. Oh, hey, you know how I missed that read and I threw it to the wrong guy. Now I learn and I don't repeat the same mistakes again. At least that's what you want. If you're a Colts fan, of course, there
Right.
is always the chance that, the guy doesn't want to get in the film room and he doesn't put the work in to improve.
Right.
But does Anthony Richardson strike you as a guy that does not put the work or that is not there in the film room studying and putting in the hours? That does he seem like that guy to you? Because for me, he seems like not. He seems
Right.
like a guy that's gonna be there, first one to show up, last one to leave,
Right.
constantly looking for ways to improve. And I think that will show in the medium term.
Yeah. Absolutely. I Nothing of what I'm seeing out of Anthony Richardson is telling me to bail.
Yeah, completely agree.
Everything that I'm seeing is like he's doing all of the things I'm asking a quarterback to do. Today it was get rid of the football. And today, like I said, when you go back and watch this game, there's a lot of drops. And I'm not even saying because there's no such thing as a good drop. You want a good drop when the alternative is a catch and a 4 yard loss. So I say that to say half of the drops are good drops. So then really it comes down to a few plays where it doesn't even have to be the bang bang plays because
Yeah,
those are in a different like category of play. There was a few plays where receivers getting hit just as he's getting the ball, and the ball, that's not even a drop. That's a defended pass. Talking about drops. There's a ball on the left side to Pittman coming back on third down where Pittman's in just a vacuum of space and the ball hits him in the hands and he drops it. There's one. And
Yeah.
there's one to Pierce on the right side where he's running a quick, really tight looking comeback because they were on the right hash. And so he runs a tight comeback, falls out on him, and he doesn't come up with that football. And all I can think about is Stroud's ball last week, right? The one to Collins on the right
Yeah, on third
sideline
and
where
12. Yeah.
he makes that catch and it's
And it's game
ball
over.
game.
Yeah.
And the difference between winning and losing is what are your sticky plays? And what will stick for me is there's a couple gotta have it plays
Yeah.
that the Colts receivers didn't make. And that's before you start attacking Anthony Richardson for 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles. And he only lost the game by 6. So like I said, there's a million different reasons you lose this football game, and not all of those problems are Anthony Richardson problems. Right. But Anthony, it's just like you said, Anthony Richardson is the kind of guy where you got to kind of have a game like this for him to be able to say, what did I do wrong? What can I do to be better? A lot of people are going to have their come to Jesus, right? They're going to have to figure it out too. Because obviously this isn't the kind of season I thought the Colts were going to have.
Yeah.
You know, I thought the Colts were going to be wildly competitive, put a bunch of points on the board, make a bunch of mistakes, lose games because you're young. I didn't think you were going to go to Lambeau and shit the bed.
Yeah.
Really didn't think
Definitely.
that everybody was going to go to Lambeau today and forget how to catch a fucking football. You know what I mean? That's what really happened. Anything outside of that is just digging too much for me, man. Like not Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor had 100 yards rushing. What more do you want? He averaged like 6 yards a carry. What more do you want? Oh, I just want everybody to do their jobs. Right. But again, that paired with missing starter level players is why you drop a game in Lambeau, because Lambeau is a hard place to play. You know what I mean, Baron?
Yeah.
So, hey, we will get together if you have time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a great week. Enjoy the games, and we'll see you after next week's games.
Yeah.